Hi, I'm Hani Gluck, and you are listening to Growing Global. I am passionate about helping entrepreneurs grow and scale their business. I've been an entrepreneur for over 2 decades. I built my own businesses, sold a business, and continue to leverage the global economy. Growing Global is about educating, inspiring, and motivating entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs on how to take yourself and your business to the next level. Verne, I am so excited to have you today. Verne is a special guest, and I'm really excited to have him on. Verne is the founder of the world-renowned EO Entrepreneurs Organization with over 14,000 members worldwide. He chaired that for 15 years. He chaired the EO's premier CEO program, The Birthing of Giants, held at MIT, a program which he still teaches today. He is the CEO and founder of Scaling Up, a global executive education and coaching company with over 180 partners on 6 continents. That's big. Verne has spent the past 3 decades helping companies scale up. He's the author of the bestseller Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, which is translated into 9 languages, and along with the editors of Fortune, authored The Greatest Business Decisions of All Times, for which Jim Collins wrote the foreword. His latest book, Scaling Up, which is The Rockefeller Habits 2.0, has won 8 major international book awards, including the prestigious International Book Award for Best General Business Book. Verne also chairs the annual Scaling Up Summits in collaboration with Bloomberg and serves in several boards. He is the co-founder and chair of Geoversity, the board member of $1 Million Women's Movement, a private investor in many scale-ups. Verne enjoys piano, tennis, magic, as a card-carrying member of the International Brotherhood of Magicians. Who knew? Awesome.
Who knew? Thank you.
Magic is like your side gig. So we met, I think the last time we met was at the HubSpot conference in Boston. And you gave this talk and you said, if you really want to scale your company, make a list of a bunch of influential people that you want associated with your brand. And so I did that exercise and you were on the list. And here we are today. So thanks for saying yes. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, so a lot of our listeners are global entrepreneurs. So we are leveraging the global workforce. And I heard some stats. Maybe you want to tell me about how US companies differ in their ability to scale versus companies around the world.
Yeah. Well, Cheney, first, I think what's interesting is last year we finished the global economy about 88 trillion, which is up from 34 trillion at the turn of the century. So, I mean, it's 2.5 times. And if you kind of can't figure out how to make $1 million or $1 billion out of that, I think it's, the onus is on us. But what's interesting is in that same time frame, the U.S. proportion of that global economy has dropped from 60% down to less than 24%. And so one of the things that we've really been encouraging U.S. companies is to get global. If you're only doing business in the U.S., you're leaving over 75% of the opportunity on the table. And we've been, I think, kind of mesmerized by having such a large economy initially that we got lazy and we didn't really feel like we needed to get global. And my view, when we hit 9/11 and we hit our rough spot, I didn't want all my economic eggs in one, geographical basket. And so that's when we decided to get global. And our aim is to be at 50% revenue outside the US. We're not quite there. We're close to 40%. But I think it gives you a chance to really play on all continents. And I think most importantly, the best defense is offense. So you want to get in somebody else's backyard before they get into your backyard. And with the internet, you can do business anytime, anywhere, from any place. And that means all of us are facing a lot more competition as well. So we're being very proactive by getting in these other countries.
What do you see as American companies have any advantage over other companies, and what do they have that we may not have, or maybe we're surprised that they have that we don't?
Yeah, no, it is interesting. You started to refer to at the beginning. We are lucky as a country, 3% of our companies are scale-ups. Whereas like in the UK, it's only 1%. And I was in China, not that recent, not for the coronavirus, but a few months ago when we launched the book in Mandarin. And over there, they've identified only 25,000 scale-ups in all of China, where we've got 200,000, 10x that in the United States. And so we do have some, I think, advantages in this economy. I think part of it is access to capital, because as you know, growth sucks cash. And we've got a very robust capital market that's pretty easy for almost any entrepreneur to be able to access that capital. And the customers have got cash as well. And so I think that's a key component versus the rest of the planet.
That's very interesting. And I think I tend to agree with you, because I was just in India and very few people even have credit cards. And we just, like, it's unheard of not to. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I remember one of my early students, Ann Price, she had this plexiglass block made of like the 25 credit cards that she used in order to fund, her company Motec, which she scaled significantly. But she needed that early, easy access to cash in order to do it.
Awesome. Okay, so as you know, I'm a graduate of the Accelerator program, which I love. It was kind of my personal MBA in business, and I got so much out of it. And so much of this book, which you signed, by the way, it's my second copy, is so much of what I've implemented in both my businesses, and it's really helped me scale tremendously. But this figure is constantly in my mind of, the valley of death. And for those of you who are not familiar with this, talk to us a little bit about these dips at different points, because it's really hard to get to 1 million. Talk to us about that.
Well, first of all, 76% of the companies in the U.S. Are run by the entrepreneur alone. They are the only employee, and I like to kid that some of those companies are overstaffed. That's a joke. But it's actually an ideal size because you don't have all this overhead. Then what you really have to do is you need to get between 8 and 10 employees, so that as you're trying to go from 1 or 2 to 8 to 10, it's the kind of the first valley of death, because you're always big enough but not big enough to get the office space, to get the right phone system, the technology, and all of that. Then there's another one between about 10 employees and 40 employees. The worst is to be about 25. Again, you're big enough but not big enough. And then there's another gap between about 50 and 150. So anyway, we detail these. They tie pretty close to revenue. So usually at about 10 employees, you hit that $1 million in revenue. And you've got enough going. It's one, you can kind of look over 8 or 9 folks. It's very, very efficient. Then 7 times 7 is 49. And so that's why 40 to 60 employees. And you still know everybody's name. Then once you get over about 70 and you don't know everyone's name anymore, then the culture starts to leak, complexity starts to crush you. And you've got to get very systematic with the company if you want to then get up to that next level. So those are kind of called Verne's Valleys.
Verne's Valleys, I like it. So, but reading this and knowing this, and, we have all these goals of where we want to take the company and revenue goals and employee goals. And I look at these daunting numbers and it kind of scares me, because I'm at those middle places where you say 350 to 500, you're good. But between 70 to 350, that's like a risky place to be. Tell me why. Like, what's going on? Is it those 3 things that you talk about that are deficient, or is there something else?
Well, it mainly has to, we put in the very beginning of the book a chapter called The 3 Barriers. And the first one is, can you grow enough leadership in order to handle, that number of people as you're beginning to scale? And it's tough. There's a war for talent out there in the marketplace. Number 2, scalable infrastructure. It's just being able to get the processes and systems in place. And by the way, we're mid-market growth companies were really bad at process. We're so focused on getting our accounting function and our marketing function and our sales function that we don't realize that the customer and really our employees experience the company through a set of processes that cut across it. And so we have a tendency just to throw people at the problem. folks come into our office, hey, I need more help. Well, go hire somebody. And here's the key indicator. The average revenue per employee of a small to mid-sized company is about $100,000 per employee. That's why 8 to 10 employees, you are able to hit about the $1 million mark. To put it in perspective, the global 500 largest companies, their average revenue per employee is almost 5 times that, almost $500,000. And so even though we see these huge companies as these big, bloated, bureaucratic messes, we think they're really good at process and infrastructure. So they're strangely much more efficient in generating revenue per employee, gross margin per employee, and in many cases, profit per employee. And so it's this lack of focus on systems and process is the real thing that gets you as you go from 70 to 350 employees.
That's good. I heard you talk about AI and how that, talk to us a little bit about what you see coming up in the future with that.
Well, we've always joked that any company that's not doing their industry plus AI is going to get replaced by a 22-year-old in Silicon Valley, but it's really a 22-year-old in Toronto. So the epicenter of AI is the University of Toronto. They have kind of put out more AI specialists at now Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and all of that. And their business school, Cheney, has really got intensely involved in helping business owners think about, all right, how are we going to really apply AI to our industry? And so the starting point is it's not AI. There's nothing artificial about it, and there's nothing intelligent about it. And as they point out, we're about 50 years away and have been 50 years away for 50 years on the real promise of AI. And the way to think about it is really as a prediction machine. They wrote a book called Prediction Machines. And what you want to do with AI is think about our machine learning. Where would knowing something sooner than later add hundreds of thousands, if not millions, to the company? So for instance, one of our clients, Co-Distributing, they distribute office furniture. It's a family business that they kind of rescued out of bankruptcy in 2010 and have scaled about 92 million now. What they did is they contracted with a local university that had a group of AI students. And what they did is they put together a project that did 2 things. One, they're constantly introducing new office products. And only about 40% of them end up being hits. So they said, could we create a machine learning system that could continue to learn that would be good at predicting which one of our new entrants would be successful or not? And working backwards, they're about 80% accurate. And so they're going to be using, and by the way, it only costs about $10,000 for them to do this project. So AI used to cost you millions. Now you can do it for thousands or tens of thousands. And they're going to be using that system now here in 2020 to better predict ahead of time which one of their new products that they're going to introduce is going to be successful. We're using AI right now a lot in HR to where we can be able to predict, hey, are we about to lose an employee? Would it be good to know if we're about to lose a customer? And again, machine learning is really good at monitoring patterns and starting to notice that, hey, this customer's ordering patterns are falling off. You might not see it, particularly a company that's got a lot of customers, but the machine can see that. And obviously, if you're in technology, you've got delivery trucks. Could we better predict if it's about to have a maintenance issue? And let's get in there and get that fixed. And most of us, a lot of us have machine learning sitting in our home. It's in the Nest thermostat, who's sitting there, learning, watching our patterns of movement and getting smarter about what the temperature should be so that we're more comfortable and we're using energy more efficiently. So if we can put it in our thermostat at home, we should be able to put it into our companies.
Okay, so if I'm a small to mid-sized business owner and I want to get in on this machine learning, what would you recommend? Like, where would I start?
Well, so you first with the question, where would knowing something sooner than later? So I was keynoting the MSP industry, the managed service providers, which is like one of the fastest growing small to mid-sized company industries on the planet. And so I asked them as an industry, where would that be helpful? And they said, we charge $100 per customer normally per month to handle their technology. And what will happen is one of our clients' employees will quit and they don't alert us. So we sit there and we're continuing to charge them for that employee. And then when everybody finally discovers it, the customer's upset, we're having to refund money, and it's just messy. Wouldn't it be better if we had a system that was monitoring the employee's usage of our technology, and all of a sudden it noticed that it fallen off a cliff with a particular employee more than 2 weeks? Maybe they were on vacation, but this thing has gone on for a few weeks, and it alerted us. That would be really useful. And so first, recognize where you think it'd be useful. Number two, right now there's a bunch of off-the-shelf products that are being developed that you might be able to just buy instead of having to develop. Or I think do exactly what they did at co-distributing. Go to your local university, and I guarantee you there's a group of students, and talk to the professor and say, hey, I've got this project, real world project, and have them and be willing, like James did at Co, to pay, like in this case, $10,000 for the students to be able to develop it. The good news, the winning platforms is Microsoft's Azure, at least according to London Business School. They've put billions into that development, and that Azure platform that's really underpinning Bing and many of the other kind of tools that we're able to use as small business owners. We can tap into their expertise.
That's awesome. Yeah, the Microsoft product is great. I know a lot of my friends are using it, and it's made some really great progress for their companies.
We're doing something similar. We've got some pretty sophisticated assessments now around people, strategy, execution, cash, and we're able to use machine learning to say, hey, if this is the number of employees you have in the industry and the number of years you've been in business and your revenue numbers and that kind of stuff, we can start to do some really nice comparatives and say, hey, you look a lot like this other group of companies, and we're seeing what they're doing. Maybe we can better predict what you ought to focus on. So our assessments that we're using at our CEO Bootcamp and with our clients are getting a lot smarter in then advising and instructing us as coaching partners how we can help those companies better. So it's not AI or people, it's a combination of both that I think is going to be at least where we are for the next 50 years.
That's awesome. So I want to talk about your MIT program because it's world renowned and it's supposed to be the best thing ever. And I'd love to be able to do that soon. But tell me, what's the biggest takeaway from that program? What do you think is the one or two pieces that people walk away and be like, wow, that was amazing?
Cheney, the biggest one is that you're not alone. Most of the entrepreneurs trying to scale up walk in thinking they're the only one that has all of these issues. And because all we ever do is talk about the successes. Nobody really talks about the failures. And by only talking about the successes, you give everybody kind of a complex. And so when they walk in and we get real honest and kind of naked about what's going on with each of our companies, we realize again that, hey, this is just normal. This is how it is. And that's very comforting. And then number two, as you know, we often learn more from each other, our peers, than we do from the professors. And so the bonds and the friendships that develop when you're together over a 3-year period is powerful. Now, there's a lot of, I think, real practical learnings about how to scale in the areas that we're talking about. In fact, the book I wrote, the very first one, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, was really codifying the curriculum that we developed for that executive program because, look, there's a lot of stuff on how to start up a company. I think there's an incubator on every corner now on the planet. I've got an MBA that's supposed to teach how to run a large company, but there really was nothing for the folks in the middle. How do you go from small to large? And that's what we really incubated and worked on for a decade at this executive program before I wrote the book.
I want to tell you something about the Rockefeller Habits. I had just started my company and I used this document and I made my team do like 1 through 10 and rate it. And we used that as really a blueprint for how we were going to tackle each issue, because you can't do everything. As much as I want to wave a wand and have everything happen yesterday, we had to really knock off each one of those 10 habits. And it's just been really, changed the company like 100%.
Well, we talk about that our tools, and we've got a whole slew of them now, are like Sudoku puzzles or crossword puzzles. I don't know if you're a big crossword puzzle fan, but how do you do those? Well, not sequentially. You do the easy ones, and then you kind of triangulate back to the harder ones. And that's how we view our work. There isn't a sequence. I wish business was that neat, but it's not. You just pick around at it. And it's crazy. You could eventually make your way through the New York Times crossword puzzle over time, but you're not going to do it right away in one sitting.
Right, for sure. So I'm curious, you talk about leaders are readers, and I have this debate with my team because I have some real technical people on my team that are really amazing at what they do. And I'm always trying to tell them about the stuff I'm reading or suggest reading material. Would you say that if somebody is not a reader, then they are not a leader and they're someone that should not be on your team? I'm just curious to hear your opinion about that.
Well, I think they need to be at least a learner. Reading is not for everybody. It's interesting. You can actually, I think, learn better by listening. Our hearing is much better developed than our seeing. And we've had the spoken word for 100,000 years. We've only had the written word for 5,000. So I think we're much better developed to hear, which is why I think still live events, people want to go to the movies. They want to go and hear people speak. So I don't care if they're readers or listeners or watch YouTube videos or whatever the case is, but I do think they've got to be a learner. And because really now that we are clear, we're in the information age, we move from our backs to our brains. This is the competitive weapon of the 21st century. And if you're going to 10x the company, whatever that means, revenue, impact, size, clients, profitability, whatever that movement is, you've got to 10x the knowledge of everybody in it. And even the tech folks that you've got, their world is changing daily, and they've got to keep up or you're going to be behind. To me, the key word is relevant. How do you keep yourself and your organization relevant? And it's only through learning.
Absolutely. And I think a lot's changed for me personally when I got super focused on just reading a book, like 2 books a month, and just really, immersing myself in all that. So I want to ask you, I know you have a bunch of books on your website that you recommend, but is there something that you're reading right now or something that you think we should all be reading? What's your a few faves right now?
Well, I'm always in the middle of about a half a dozen books, but I just finished one on the flight from Kuala Lumpur 2 days ago. And I'm lucky. I get the advanced copies of books. And the gentleman, Brian Domain, who helped me write my second book, he was the key editor at Fortune that masked the Fortune writers for us to do that greatest business decisions of all time. He has just come off of, Jamie, a 3-year project researching Amazon. And May 5th, he's got a new book coming out called Basonomics. And it really digs in deep to what is behind the success of Amazon. And for me, my favorite chapter in there is how do you compete with Amazon? And there's a lot of small to mid-sized companies that, Amazon's moving into every space you can imagine. The first real threat to Google. More people now search for a product on Amazon than do on Google. Real threat to Federal Express. And obviously a real threat to a lot of small to mid-sized companies, particularly retailers. And so his chapter around what do you have to do to compete with Amazon, I thought was really instructive. So anyway, I just literally absorbed that book a couple of days ago.
Awesome. Okay, well, look out for that in May. So I want, we have a lot of business owners listening today. And is there I know maybe you want to talk a little bit about those 3, the leadership development, the marketing, and the scalable infrastructure. Just touch on each one of those points, and maybe if there's some takeaway that somebody can listen to today and take back to their business to kind of move things forward.
Good. So let me go in reverse. So we'll start with marketing effectiveness. And it may seem too specific, but the marketing function really is the most critical if you want to scale. And it's marketing not just necessary to get new customers. It may be to get new talent, to get new relationships, investors, even to garner attention out there in the marketplace, which is why you need strong marketing. I think it's one of the reasons why it's the only function that Steve Jobs chaired at Apple, which was a 3-hour. I just finished another book on Steve Jobs over the weekend as well that was super enlightening. And very specifically, it was Regis McKenna who really taught Steve and all of Silicon Valley how to do marketing, and me. It was back in 1983. I was getting ready to launch what was the precursor now to EO. And I decided to call up Regis McKenna. One of my views is no time for amateur hour. If you want to get anything done, just go to the best. And so I reached out to Regis. He had helped Steve get, Apple to almost $2 billion while he was still in his 20s. And Regis really said two things. He said, one, first thing you got to do is set up a marketing meeting, even if it's with yourself, which it was at the time, just me. A 1 hour every week where you're going to work on marketing. And then what are you going to do in that hour? Well, you're going to work on two things. You're going to work on the 4 Ps, product, price, place, and promotion. Now, those have been updated to the 4 Es of marketing. So we encourage people to go out and just Google 4 Es. And Ogilvy's got this SlideShare show and this PDF. For instance, what's replaced product is experience. And that's what we really learned was the secret to Apple's success. It wasn't just the product, but it was the entire experience, including the box was a great experience. Steve launched the retail stores because he didn't feel like the retail experience was good enough for his product. And so look at the 4 E's of marketing. In my view, marketing strategy equals strategy. But then the number one thing you want to work on, and that's what you referenced at the very beginning of this interview, is what Bill Gates considered the best question he had ever been asked. And I remember Regis's team asking me, which is, all right, get the piece of paper out. And what are the top 25 influencers, brands, key relationships that you need to bolt on, Verne, to this organization that's really going to help it scale quickly? And they said, look, the bigger the names, the faster you're going to scale. So I was young and dumb and a student at Wichita State. So I take out this piece of paper and I wrote down, remember, it's in the mid-'80s, I write down President Ronald Reagan. I'm going to have him be the first president in the United States to utter the word entrepreneur. He did. I got invited to the White House, and the rest was history. I wrote down Steve Jobs, and I ended up throwing the first public event where he spoke after being fired from Apple. I wrote down Michael Dell, who I sat right next to Steve Jobs at that event there just 36 months later. Inc. magazine, Venture magazine, both their founders became very, very dear friends and supporters as we scaled up ACE and then YEO. And it was crazy. We just spent an hour working through that list. And in 36 months, it went from an idea to we were a global organization. And that's, to me, the key thing you've got to do in terms of marketing. Now, if we back up into scalable infrastructure, you mentioned books. A year ago, I named the #1 business book by a friend of mine, Ron Lovett, called Outrageous Empowerment. And again, he's one of us. He started out as a private security guard, and he scaled it to 1,500 private security guards. But the key, no management. One of the things that's happening is people have had such low engagement scores, and we know it's because they don't like their boss. And we've been spending all this time to try to fix the boss. Well, the real solution is just get rid of the boss. Nobody wants a boss in the 21st century. Nobody needs managed. This is what manages us in the 21st century. We have any question, this is where we go. If we're not feeling well, we don't even go to our doctor. We go to this device. And that's what Ron did. So at 1,500 private security guards, they were organized into small teams, kind of like a special forces team. Now there was a team lead, but there was no area manager, district manager, regional manager. All of that middle management ends up sucking up about 30% of your compensation costs. And much better if you can kind of split that with the frontline employees. You keep half and distribute the other half to them so they're paid more. And that's what Ron was able to do in his book. And he details how you build this kind of new organizational chart without all of this middle management. And then the top one we already really talked about, which is leadership development. The real constraint, the scaling, is just kind of right between our ears. And it's this ability, it's Bill Gates' Think Week, where his record was 112 books, manuscripts, PhD thesis, white papers that he absorbed in a 1 week period. It was out of that came the ideas every 6 months that continue to keep Microsoft relevant. And I think what's interesting is the two #1 market cap companies in the world today are two of the oldest technology companies, Apple and Microsoft. And they're beating the young kids, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons right now out there in the marketplace.
I did hear you say that it takes 25 years or to grow up or to become, and you think that those companies that have, right, a lot of years behind them are now mature and sustaining. And do you think that's still true?
Well, it has been generally takes about 25 years for companies to hit the inflection point. Apple didn't hit its inflection point till its 25th anniversary. Starbucks didn't hit its inflection point till 25 years. But the unicorns have been able to do it in about half the time. And I've studied them, and we've really figured out that they do two things different than all other companies. And there are two things that us mere mortals can do as well. And so we're beginning to teach those ideas to scale ups, which are really helping them scale faster.
What are those two things?
I thought you would ask. So the first one is you have to realize they're not focused at all on the supply side. For the last gazillion years, it's all about supply chain management. Can we find it better, faster, cheaper? And that was one of the main reasons we ran around the planet, is how can we get cheaper labor in India or China or something to fuel what it was that we were doing here in the United States. All of the unicorns don't supply anything. They are all on the demand side of the equation. Whereas before you had to know everything about supply, now the winners are those who know the most about demand. So I'll give you an example. Naomi Simpson. Naomi I just saw her when I was in Sydney a couple of weeks ago. She has a company called the Red Balloon, which sells experiences instead of stuff, gifts experiences. And today, she is solely a marketing company driving demand to about 2,500 suppliers of experiences. So for instance, the person that she contracts with to give people hot air balloon rides, back when she started with him, he would do about 700 rides a year. Today, he does 23,000. And 90% of her business comes from her. And in fact, most of her suppliers now today get 80% of their business from Naomi, who has become this unbelievable marketing machine driving demand to all of these suppliers. And that's what Amazon does, that's what Google does, that's what Uber, Airbnb, TripAdvisor, all the unicorns are on the demand side. So just like Naomi did as a small business now, she's the 100-ton gorilla. You've got to know and be focused on the demand side. By the way, you want to use machine learning to be able to help you better understand and predict what that demand is so you can better feed those opportunities to the suppliers. That's number one. The second thing is, and it ties to the first, is they've all figured out how to get more people involved in their business model, particularly free people. So if you look at Facebook, the real valuation of Facebook is tied to the number of users, over 2 billion. And the question is, who put up those pages and who's keeping those pages updated? It's the users. And what does Facebook pay them? Nothing. And in fact, I like to kid that many small companies, their employees are working harder for Facebook than they are for them. The same with Amazon. I mean, Amazon's real business model is powered by all of those reviews. And that's why it's such a powerful search engine, and then is able to better drive demand to all the suppliers. People beg. I've got over 500 reviews now on my book. And what did Amazon pay for everybody to do those reviews? Nothing. Maybe you get, an award, you're a power rater, or you get stars. But TripAdvisor, the real power of TripAdvisor is all of those reviews. Even Google. If you think about it, you have a question, they're going to give you an answer. But they don't have a whole bunch of smart people typing fast. They have some smart people typing fast, but it's building algorithms that tap into the collective intelligence of the 3.7 billion people that have ever been on the internet, and then deliver up you an answer in nanoseconds. So the short of it is, all the unicorns focus on the demand, not the supply. And number two, they have figured out how to tap into the wisdom of the crowd. And the crowd is powering their business model instead of just the handful of employees that they've got themselves. And we can do the same.
That is brilliant. That's really got my mind working on overdrive right now. I'm trying to think how I'm going to apply that to my own business, but that's awesome.
Well, the first place a lot of businesses are applying it is through crowdfunding. They call them crowdfunding sites. They're really pre-sales. And so I like to tell the story of this father-son team out in Australia that really wanted to tackle this issue of helping people more easily harvest their own honey. So they invented this little plastic device called the flow. And they needed like $70,000 to get it launched. Well, the old days, we go to friends, families, and fools, but they decided to put it up on Indiegogo. And then sure enough, the son, they're the Andersons, the son takes out the piece of paper, makes the list of influencers that he calculated were communicating with about 3 million people around the globe that were just rabid about, growing their own food and harvesting what they eat. And he began to nurture those relationships, YouTubers and bloggers and writers for certain publications and the like. And then he said, look, we're getting ready to launch this thing on Indiegogo, next month, next week, tomorrow, next hour. And it literally practically broke the internet. They pre-sold 250,000 in the first 15 minutes. They hit their first million in 3 hours. They qualified for membership in EO. They doubled to 2 million in the next 11 hours. Normally it takes longer than a half a day to double your revenue. And when the dust settled 30 days later, they had pre-sold over $12 million of this $600 device. They delivered on all of them successfully. They 3D printed, so there are no non-tech companies in the world. And they just did a second Indiegogo launch of the Flow 2, and they pre-sold over 13 million this time. And look, you couldn't have done that before. It would have been friend, families, and fools stuck in Australia selling a few hundred units, not 36,000 units in 30 days. But it's really understanding how do you use the power of the tools and the crowd in order to really fuel your business.
This is awesome, Verne. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. So where can people find you? And tell us about your book and the website.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we recommend is make sure that you've got a good, easy name. And we didn't, our original name was Gazelles. I thought it was clever. It's, a name that they give economically to growth companies, but nobody, Cheney, could spell it. So like 1 Z, 2 Z's, 12 L's. I dreaded when somebody said, what's your email address? So we went through a rebranding, and we're now, the book's called Scaling Up. And so the website is scalingup.com. So, and we've rebranded. We have the Scaling Up scoreboard, our online Scale Up U. So everything is just scaling up. And we also have a media site called scaleups.com. That's what they call growth companies. There's startups and there's scale-ups. So we have scalingup.com and scaleups.com, and I'm so happy we own those two URLs.
That's great. You definitely own that scaling up. That's all you. Purple. It's you got that locked down. So you do the CEO Bootcamp. Tell us about, and you have the Scaling Up Summit.
Yeah. Well, we have 4 product lines. So we talk about 4 things: people, strategy, execution, and cash. And so our product lines align with those. So people need coaching. So we have a whole coaching organization that you mentioned at the beginning, 180 partners and growing around the globe, supporting about 3,000 clients at any one time. Then what really supports our strategy is learning. So we have our summits, our scale-up masterclasses, our workshops, and then we have a whole robust online learning platform, now rebranding Scaling Up You. And then under the technology side, as Jim Collins said, you really need under execution, you need technology. So we have a whole suite of software products, our SaaS offering called Scoreboard. Because if you think about it, accounting the CFO has an accounting system, sales and marketing have their CRM system, operations will have their probably unique system for their industry, but what's the system for the CEO, the head of the company, to kind of keep track of all the cascading priorities and metrics? And that's one of the issues around scalable infrastructure. At some point, you can't keep track of it on enough Excel spreadsheets. And so we built a platform. It makes it really easy for a CEO to drive accountability throughout the organization. And then under cash, we have a whole capital division that really helps entrepreneurs not screw up that final decision, which is when they go to sell their company, that they don't end up get it stolen from them, because most entrepreneurs blow that final decision. So coaching, learning, our software platform, and then we really help companies get their cash right and help them exit.
You're awesome, Verne.
Well,
thank you so much for your time. It's really great. Thank you so much for listening. For more information on how to grow your business, visit our website at 4dglobalinc.com. That's the number 4, the letter D as in David, global, GLOBALINC.com. Click on the Owners Academy tab for more videos on sales, marketing, operations, and leadership. If you are in the healthcare space and would like to learn more about how to get started with an employee in India, or how to start a risk-free free trial with 4D Global, click on the Get Started for Free button on our website to book a time with someone on our team. See you next time.